You or someone close to you may have had the misfortune to encounter this charmless character online in recent days. It's apparently known as Momo, and some have linked it to concerns over child safety.
Police in the U.S. and the U.K. are warning parents. It's all over social media.
A terrifying video that targets your kids. The online challenge encouraging children to kill themselves.
Suicide game encouraging children to harm themselves.
Hee I'm Momo, what's your name? Play dares. Did it suggest a dare to your daughter?
If you know what Momo is, you're doing better than most police forces and most schools in this country. In its purest form, it's a warning that's circulating mainly among adults that children, when they see an image on WhatsApp, are going to be encouraged to do violent acts, perhaps even suicide, by a character represented by this bizarre image of a Japanese puppet.
What seems to have been happening is roughly this. Word of mouth and news stories have prompted some to believe the Momo character pops up on children's phones and computers, encouraging them to take part in a so-called challenge, including self-harm. But the evidence for this is sketchy, to say the least. Momo began life as an unlovable but otherwise blameless piece of art in a Japanese gallery. The term popped up on the internet in France, Spain and Germany, before reaching Argentina, where the phenomenon has been linked to one death, though police remain sceptical. From there, it spread to the States last year.
It then somehow seems to have circulated, possibly through WhatsApp groups, by one woman who is our sort of patient zero in all of this, who posted on a West Houghton, which is a small town outside Bolton, in a local Facebook group warning about this. The Manchester Evening News picked it up a day later and said these are the concerns that are circulating. And then in a drip, drip, drip of news stories over the next week, suddenly it exploded. And we've had hundreds of people get in touch to say that their children have been sent home from school with letters warning about this, all based on no actual hard evidence that there's a risk.
Newsnight's seen examples of letters from schools to parents warning them over Momo. Police forces we've spoken to say that while there is considerable anxiety, they're aware of no incidents of children being harmed. Momo was a big talking point on daytime TV today.
Yeah, it's a scary face, but there's loads of them on the internet. What makes it dangerous? How is it linked with suicide? What have we actually physically seen that is causing this?
I think it's the case of, even if it is a hoax, you know, all this hysteria and hype about it, is it perpetuating then for copycats?
It's an absolute perfect storm. You've got the traditional media in a death spiral trying to get as many clicks as possible to their sites. You've got parents who have genuine, legitimate concerns about the safety of their children online, but don't quite know what to do about it. And I think one of the biggest lessons from this is that teenagers on the whole are pretty smart in terms of being media savvy and working out what's legitimate news and what to trust. It's the adults and the older people who aren't that good.
Well, Steve Smith, Jim Waterson ending that report. I'm now joined by Amelia Tait, a journalist specialising in digital culture, who's written for The Eye, The New Statesman and Wired, and Rowan Davies, who's head of policy at Mumsnet, a very well-known parenting site. Thanks to you both for coming in. Whether you see this as a hoax or just a mistake that's gone out of control, the anatomy of this is absolutely extraordinary, Amelia. I mean, do you remember when you first became aware of it and how quickly you decided it didn't actually...
I became aware of it last week and started reporting debunking it on Friday. But since then, it's kind of just constantly evolved, and the fears and the rumours have kind of changed across the week. So there are now rumours it's popping up on YouTube, on Peppa Pig videos, on children's games. So it's just a constantly evolving thing. And it's basically a playground rumour gone global because of the internet. And
is that because, as Jim was saying, parents, mums, you know, they're just not really getting to grips with the internet at all? I mean, you hear something like that, you have to assume the worst because you wouldn't know how to check.
I would say it's not just parents doing this. I think this is part of a bigger story where we all on the internet need to start engaging our critical faculties a little bit better. So I have to say, on Mumsnet, on this particular issue, they were very savvy about it very quickly. They debunked it themselves on the threads very quickly. And since then have mostly just been discussing what Amelia was talking about, the nature of the hoax and why is it spread so quickly. But I think, you know, if you kind of zoom out, as Jim was saying on your
So
report.
what would be, you know, a quick debunk for you? Because in a way, you know, it doesn't have to be on a platform like Mumsnet for very long for it to then be a virus in you know, somebody else's school headmaster's inbox or whatever, right?
On Mumsnet, they use Snopes a lot, which is an online sort of hoax checker, and they use that as a very trusted source. But also, it was really helpful that people like Amelia reported this really quickly. So it was in newspaper titles that they know and trusted, and they could link to them and say.
So where are the loops then? I mean, where is it going wrong? Because if parents are concerned, it's a fairly natural thing to want to share it with other concerned parents.
Yeah.
If schools hear from concerned parents, they're going to want to shut that down. If police hear from schools, where does it? Who should be verifying?
The problem is the media. You know, it starts on one Facebook comment in one Facebook group, and tabloids decide to report that as fact. That lends legitimacy to that one comment and causes more comments.
Because they report as fact that schools are concerned rather than that the hoax exists.
The first story was that a child had heard about Momo and cried, and that was the first story, which, you know, it's concerning, it's sad for the child to see a distressing image online, but they weren't approached by Momo, they weren't told to harm anyone by Momo, but that story that they cried became all these fear-mongering stories.
It does make you think we haven't moved on at all from superstitions, whether it was about the Bermuda Triangle in the 1940s or about the tube and those extraordinary stories of, you know, devils coming out of the underground to take people, you know, off the railways when they first started. I mean, are we just literally repeating superstitions from every age, but this time in a digital way?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. It's just the internet means it can spread instantaneously, and that you can get all these voices weighing in, lending legitimacy. People saying, well, I've seen it, so it must be real, but why are you trusting that random person on the internet?
Does it make you worry, Rowan, about the role that Mumsnet is playing? I know we're always asking the difference between a publisher and a platform, but when something like this happens, don't you think actually, in the same way that we talk to Facebook about this, you do have that responsibility?
Absolutely, and we did have this conversation in the office when this story broke. We had the conversation with our mod team, and they were saying if it mushroomed on our site and people were really scared and it wasn't being debunked, we would step in ourselves.
So you would put an editorial line?
Yes, we would. In this case,
have you done that before?
Yeah, we have done when we know that people are really being frightened by something, and we know that there is good sourcing that says, OK, calm down, you don't have to do this. It's perfectly possible for us to go on a thread and put a comment.
You talk about, you know, the media getting these stories out of hand. Presumably, there are still, you know, there are many of us in the sort of wider, you know, mainstream media who wouldn't know how to check if a YouTube video could be hacked or if a WhatsApp message could start, you know, encouraging a child or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
I debunked it on Monday. It's only been reported today as sort of a news story because these sort of charities have come out and condemned it. So the way that the traditional news works doesn't really have its eye on the ground in terms of these mums in these Facebook groups. And there does need to be that greater digital literacy, you know, in newsrooms so that people can access this thing earlier and kind of nip it in the bud earlier.
Do you think it's actually done any harm?
Yes, definitely. I've spoken to parents whose children are extremely distressed, can't go to sleep, are crying, are screaming, not because Momo's approached them, but because the school has told them about Momo, other children have told them about Momo, parents themselves have shown children Momo and said, watch out for this.
You know, we've literally shoved it in their faces.
They've literally put it in their faces, and now children are crying, yeah.
Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.